I knew my husband, Ethan Callahan, had faked his own death and slipped into his younger brother's identity, and I still didn't expose him. Instead, I went straight to the base commander and told him my husband was dead, then asked him to have my husband's name officially struck from the Army rolls and his service record closed. In my last life, Owen Callahan died in an accident, and Ethan gave up his command as a battalion commander to impersonate him so Brooke Maddox wouldn't be left a widow. I recognized him instantly and demanded to know why he was stealing Owen's life. Ethan denied it without blinking and coldly ripped his arm out of my grip. "Lena, I know Ethan's death is crushing you, but you can't just decide I'm him because you can't face it." He shielded Brooke behind him, shoved me into an ice-choked river, and warned me to stop fantasizing. My 5-year-old daughter Nora sobbed and asked why Daddy didn't want her, and he locked her in the old barn to think about what she'd done, leaving her hungry for 3 days and nights. My mother-in-law spat that I was a walking curse, then kicked Nora and me out with nothing. Ethan went around telling everyone I'd lost my mind, that my husband was barely in the ground, and I was already making a play for his brother. With the whole base and town looking at me like trash, I drifted through the dead of winter with Nora in my arms until I froze to death. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Ethan first became Owen. "Lena, I'm so sorry. I never thought Ethan would be taken so suddenly," Ethan said, his eyes red and his face carved into grief. When they carried in Owen's body, I cried right on cue and called him my husband, loud enough for everyone to hear. Owen's face was gray-blue, and he was dead beyond any doubt. Ethan and Owen looked exactly alike, and no one suspected for a second that Ethan had swapped their identities. After a while, I wiped my tears and said, "We can't keep the body here. We should have him cremated today, so Ethan can at least go with some dignity." Ethan nodded immediately, more eager than I was to make the body disappear. As he shifted the stretcher, I caught a glimpse of his hand and the thin scar in the web between his thumb and forefinger. In my last life, that scar was how I knew the man breathing was Ethan. This time, I acted like I hadn't seen a thing. Back then, Ethan and Owen had been sent out for disaster relief, and Owen took a blow to the back of the head and died on the spot. Ethan refused to let Brooke be widowed, so he threw away his command and stepped into Owen's name. To everyone else, Ethan's deliberate imitation was enough to fool them. But I was his wife, and I knew him too well to be tricked. I demanded to know why he'd abandon Nora and me and pretend to be his brother. Ethan's expression stayed flat as glass, and he denied everything while shoving me away hard. "Lena, I know Ethan's death is crushing you, but you can't just decide I'm him because you can't face it." I kept pressing him, stunned out of my mind, and he shoved me into the river during a brutal cold snap. From the bank, he held Brooke close and watched me thrash in the ice. "Even if you're my sister-in-law, I won't let you hurt my wife." Brooke hid behind him and called me a shameless homewrecker, saying my husband was barely in the ground and I was already trying to steal her man. I burned with fever for 3 days and nights, with only 5-year-old Nora beside me. She cried and asked Ethan why Daddy wouldn't admit she was his. He said she was repeating my lies, and he locked her in the old barn to think about what she'd done. It took me 3 days to drag myself back from the brink of death, and Nora had been left without food for 3 days and nights. My mother-in-law cursed me again as a walking disaster and insisted I was the one who killed her son. She threw us out on the street, not even tossing me a coat or a dollar. In the middle of a blizzard, I pounded on the door and begged Ethan to save our child. All I got back was his voice, cold as the storm itself. "Lena, you'd have to be out of your mind to think I'm Ethan. Face reality, and stay away from me." The neighbors all believed him. They said I was born cursed, and I'd finally snapped and mistaken my husband's brother for my husband. With Nora in my arms and nowhere to go, I froze and starved until I died on the street. Remembering it lit a fire in my chest, hot enough that I wanted to drag the whole family down with me. Watching Ethan rush to cremate his brother, I thought, if you want to play house with Brooke, then I'll let you have it. You can be Owen for the rest of your life. Ethan moved fast. Before long, the body was cremated, and he came back with a sealed urn. A wake had already been set up in the living room, and the neighbors were already coming by with food and help. Seeing a living, breathing man reduced to a framed black and white photo and a box of ashes made everyone sigh. I looked hollowed out, and after what I'd lived through last time, I really did resemble a widow who'd been gutted by grief. Ethan had his arm around Brooke when he spoke to me. Brooke just found out she's pregnant. With the crowds and all this stress, she shouldn't have to sit up through the vigil. He guided her down like she was made of glass, his face full of tenderness. I ignored their little performance, but Brooke turned to me anyway. "Lena, there's no man in your house anymore," she said, eyes bright with greed, dangling empty promises as she tried to squeeze benefits out of me. "Sooner or later you'll be leaning on my Owen to handle things for you, and you can't expect that for free." Ethan chimed in like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "You still have some gold bangles and earrings from what you brought into the marriage, right? Give them to Brooke. You're a widow with a kid," he added, voice smooth and cold. "You don't need anything that fancy." My head snapped up, and I stared at him until my vision shook. Those were my mom's heirlooms, what she'd saved up for her whole life, and the only thing she left me before she died. How dare he? Ethan didn't look guilty for even a second. "You don't wear jewelry when you do chores anyway, so it'll actually get used." And Ethan asked me to take care of something for him before he died. He went on. "Give me the cash he kept in your room." I stayed silent for a few beats, then covered my face and started to cry. "There's no money," I sobbed. "Ethan's cash is long gone, and I even drained what I brought into the marriage trying to keep us afloat. I don't have a single dollar to my name." Ethan's face tightened. "That's impossible." He told me he still had a little over 500. I looked right at him, steady as stone. He lied because he was ashamed. He wanted to sound like he had something saved, that's all. Then I raised my voice so everyone could hear. "Owen, your brother is dead and you're the only man left in this family. If you won't even help me and you're still trying to take money from me, are you trying to drive me and my child to our graves?" It was a lie, of course, but Ethan couldn't argue without exposing himself. The neighbors glanced at me with pity and started urging him to give his brother's widow a hand. Ethan's jaw worked, his expression dark. He said he had 500. There's no way he was wrong. I gave a short, bitter laugh and stood up, then carried every last thing Ethan had left behind out into the open. "This is all he left me," I said. "I'll burn it right in front of you, so you can stop obsessing over what you think he hid." I dragged over the metal burn barrel and tossed in his papers and letters, then set his clothes on top and lit the pile. Ethan flinched like he was about to stop me, then forced himself still, his face turning nearly black. When I threw in the gifts he'd once given me, he finally snapped. "Lena, those were Ethan's presents to you," he said, voice sharp. "What do you think you're doing?" I choked on my words and let the tears spill. "He's gone. Keeping his things won't bring him back. And since you two keep cornering me the second he's dead and demanding money," I pressed, trembling with anger, "tell me where exactly Ethan had cash to leave me." I cried until my face burned, grief and fury twisted together, and the room filled with helpless murmurs. Ethan's face stayed rigid and ashen, and all he could do was watch while I burned everything he'd ever owned. When I went back inside, Nora was sitting there with her big eyes fixed on me, confusion written all over her face. "Mom," she whispered, "that's obviously Dad. Why does everybody keep saying he's my uncle?" Something inside my chest clenched so hard it hurt. Even my child knew who he was, and he still refused to admit it, cruel enough to deny his own daughter without blinking. I pulled Nora into my arms and fought to keep my voice steady. "Sweetheart, that isn't Daddy. Daddy is gone." That same day, I went to the base headquarters with the death certificate, reported the loss, and asked for Ethan's name to be officially struck from the Army rolls and his service record closed. The commander said, "I've already been notified that Ethan Callahan was killed in the line of duty. I'm truly sorry. As next of kin, if you have needs, the unit will do what it can," he added. I didn't hesitate. "Sir, I want a job on base. I just need to be able to feed my daughter and myself." He looked surprised. "Base work is exhausting, and it means starting over away from home." "You're sure?" That was the whole point, so I nodded. The paperwork moved quickly. Ethan's service record was closed out, and I was issued survivor benefits along with a funeral stipend. When I got back, my mother-in-law was sitting in the yard, and the moment she saw me, her mouth twisted. "The walking disaster is back," she sneered. "Your husband dies, and you're still out running around. My son must have been cursed to marry you." Nora sat on the ground with her head down, shucking corn as she sniffled. Her little hands were covered in blisters, and several had split open, the skin red and swollen. The rage in me flared up again as I scooped her into my arms. "She's 5. Her hands are bleeding. You really don't see that." My mother-in-law planted her hands on her hips and spat. "You little pot stirrer. You didn't even give the Callahans a boy, and you think you get to talk back. Both of you are outsiders," she went on, eyes hard. "You don't work, but you still want to live here for free?" I let out a cold laugh. "My husband's dead." "Fine. I'll leave, and you won't have to worry about me mooching off your family." I turned to go, and she lunged to block me, suddenly frantic. "If you leave, who's going to wait on Brooke and help her bring my grandson into this world?" she snapped. "You've eaten under my roof for years. Don't think you can just walk away." Brooke stood by the window with one hand on her belly, smiling like she'd won. "Lena," she said sweetly, "you couldn't give this family a son. I'm carrying the only grandson they're getting, so you'd better learn your place and take care of me." Ethan had an arm around her, steadying her like a husband would, and his voice turned into a command. "Mom's getting older, and Brooke needs looking after. Stop being stubborn, Lena." I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. When I had Nora, my water broke, and I went to the hospital alone, and not a single person in this house even asked if I was alive. My mother-in-law didn't care because Nora wasn't a boy, and Ethan didn't show up at all, not once. So what right did they have to demand I break my back for them now? I clenched my teeth, carried Nora inside, and carefully rubbed ointment over every raw spot on her hands. When I stepped back out, I heard Ethan and Brooke talking in low voices. "Ethan," Brooke murmured, "look at Lena. If you hadn't stepped into Owen's life and stayed with me, she would have destroyed me." Ethan's reply was gentle. "Don't worry, Brooke. For you and our baby, I'll protect you for the rest of my life. And Mom's always been on your side," he added. Otherwise, she never would have agreed to me taking Owen's identity. My nails dug into my palm until it stung, and I nearly bit through my lip. So the baby in Brooke's belly was Ethan's, and she and my mother-in-law had known all along that he was impersonating Owen. They'd been sneaking around and sleeping together far earlier than I'd ever imagined, and I was the only one kept in the dark. That night, watching Nora sleep, I told myself we just had to hold on a little longer for her sake, because we were leaving soon. 2 days later, word came from the commander that my job was arranged, and I could report whenever I was ready. I packed immediately. But the moment I stepped outside, Ethan was there, his face set and storm dark. His gaze dropped to the one-way ticket in my hand, and his voice turned to ice. "Lena," he said, "where do you think you're going?" Instinctively, I clenched the ticket in my fist and shielded Nora behind me. "Where I'm going is none of your business," I said. "You don't get a say, Owen Callahan." I deliberately stressed his name. Ethan's face stiffened for a split second, then he smoothed it over. "Brooke's pregnant. She needs someone taking care of her, so you'll do what you've always done, keep the house running, and you'll still have food to eat." I stared at him ice cold. "Ethan is dead, remember? I'm an outsider, and I'm not staying in your house. My daughter and I don't matter to you anyway," I added. "Brooke's your wife, so you can take care of her yourself." I turned to leave with Nora. Ethan strode over and snatched the ticket out of my hand before I could react. He tore it into pieces and said, like it was final, "I'm doing this for your own good. You're a widow with a child. How are you supposed to survive out there? Stay here and at least you won't starve." Paper scraps fluttered to the ground, and I shook with rage. I shoved him hard. "So you know I'm your sister-in-law. Then back off and stay away from me." He didn't step back. He stepped in, still wearing that superior look, impatience sharpening his features. "Don't make me do this the hard way," he snapped. "I'm letting you stay. What more do you want?" I almost laughed. Last time, I begged him to save our child, and he stood by while his mother threw us out. Now I was leaving on my own, and suddenly they couldn't let me go. "You're my husband's brother," I said through clenched teeth. "You're not my husband, and I can leave whenever I want. Who are you to stop me?" His brow furrowed, and his voice shifted into a false kind of compromise. "Lena, you're really that heartless. My brother dies, and you can't wait to run." "Fine," he said, eyes dark. "I'll take care of both households. You can stay under my roof, and I'll be your man too. You're just desperate for a man, aren't you?" he went on, breath hot with entitlement. "I'll give you a place and a name, and Brooke's baby will count as yours too." Before he could finish, I put everything I had into my arm and slapped him across the face. His head snapped to the side, and his expression turned instantly vicious. "You've lost your mind," he hissed. "Today, you're not going anywhere." He grabbed my wrist and shoved me toward the house, and I fought him with every ounce of strength I had. In the middle of the struggle, a burst of noise erupted outside, and the door was shoved open. Ethan froze when he saw who was standing there. Brooke was at the front, with several neighbors crowding in behind her. She let out a sharp scream, her face tightening as her eyes locked onto Ethan's hand on my wrist. "Owen," she shrieked, "what the hell are you doing?" People behind her started whispering, their expressions turning strange. "Aren't they sister-in-law and brother-in-law?" someone muttered. "It's not even sundown." "Unbelievable," another voice hissed. "Ethan's barely gone, and they're already sneaking around and sleeping together." Ethan turned, saw the crowd, and panic flashed in his eyes. He released me and hurried over to Brooke. "Honey, it's not what it looks like." Lena came onto me. He jabbed a finger at me, righteous outrage on his face. "She thinks I'm my brother," he said loudly. "She wanted me to take care of both households because she said she can't live without a man." My stomach dropped. The way he accused me was exactly the same as last time, disgust written all over his face while he stood pressed close to Brooke like I was something filthy. Brooke's expression twisted into something mean and sharp, and her voice turned shrill. "Lena Hart, you nasty bitch, trying to seduce my husband in broad daylight? You shameless slut." I hadn't even spoken before she charged at me, her hand lifted high. "Homewrecker," she spat. "I'm going to tear your face up and see how you seduce my man then." No one stopped her. They just whispered louder, feeding on it. "So she's after her dead husband's brother," someone said. "Shameless. People always have something to say about a widow." "Her husband's barely gone and she's already acting up," another added. "God knows how messy she's been behind closed doors." "She acted like she was devoted to Ethan," someone sighed. "Who knew she'd start treating his brother like he was Ethan? What a damn shame." I dodged Brooke and tried to speak, desperate to cut through the lies. "That's not true. It's Ethan." Ethan cut me off. He pointed at his own face, the red imprint of my slap still bright on his cheek, and shouted, "She tried to seduce me." I said no, and she hit me. The crowd's eyes turned even uglier, their contempt immediate. Brooke slapped me hard, then burst into loud, sobbing theatrics. "Everybody look," she wailed. "This widow's husband just died, and she's already trying to seduce his brother. I'm pregnant. She's trying to drive me to my death." She cried like I'd already taken her man. Nora ran out and shoved Brooke away, wrapping herself around me. "That's not true," she cried. "My mom didn't do anything wrong. Uncle Ethan is the one who won't let us leave." Ethan gave a short, scornful laugh, like he hadn't torn up my ticket minutes ago. "Lena, you're something else," he said coolly. "You've already brainwashed your kid. She believes anything you tell her, so what's next? Are you going to make her call me Dad?" Nora started crying harder. "You're not my dad. Mom said Daddy is gone." I pulled Nora tight against me and said flatly, "I'm not arguing with you people. Let me leave." Brooke wouldn't let it go. Her long nails raked toward me. "You seduce my husband and think you can just walk away," she screamed. "Not today. You're going to answer for this." I stumbled back, trying to avoid her. Brooke dropped to the floor first and let out an exaggerated scream. "Babe," she shrieked, clutching her belly. "She's trying to kill our baby." She shoved me so I'd miscarry. A figure rushed in like a storm. My mother-in-law's face was twisted with fury, her usual sharpness turning downright monstrous. "You walking curse," she spat at me. "Wasn't it enough that you got my son killed? I still fed you under my roof, and now you're trying to hurt my grandbaby." I hope you rot, she screamed. Get out of my house right now, and don't you dare take a single cent with you. She yanked the canvas bag off my shoulder and shoved me and Nora toward the door. Ethan stood off to the side, lips parting like he wanted to speak, and then he said nothing at all. In the scuffle, the bag tore open and everything spilled across the ground. My mother-in-law snatched things up fast, and then her face changed in an instant. Well, she said, eyes lighting up. No wonder you've been stirring up trouble. Look at all this money. This has to be my son's, she declared. You hit it, you little tramp. She grabbed my savings passbook and tried to stuff it into her pocket, grinning like she'd hit the lottery. I lunged for it. That's the survivor benefit the unit issued for me and Nora after Ethan died. You already took what you could. You have no right to touch that. The moment Ethan was killed in the line of duty, she rushed to claim the death benefit, never expecting there would be money set aside for me and Nora too. She shoved me hard and shouted so the whole room could hear. What do you mean yours? She screeched. I'm his mother. All of it should come to me. Whoever approved that must be blind. I bit down until my mouth hurt, staring at the passbook in her hand and desperately trying to figure out how to get it back. Then more people poured in from outside, and a deep, commanding voice cut through the chaos. The survivor benefits I authorized, what exactly is the problem? It was the commander. He strode in, took one look at the chaos, and his face hardened. By regulation, the survivor benefits go to Ethan Callahan's wife and child, he said flatly. No one else is allowed to seize them. A dozen MPs followed in behind him, and everyone in the room fell silent. The moment Ethan saw the commander, he plastered on a smile and hurried over, oily and eager. Sir, why are you here in person? He said. You don't know what kind of woman Lena is. She fooled you. She put on a show with my brother's funeral, but behind the scenes she's been trying to seduce me, he continued, voice rising. Because I look like my brother, she thinks she can marry me. It's disgusting. The moment my mother-in-law realized who he was, she dropped to the ground and started wailing. Sir, you tell me if this is fair, she cried. My oldest never mistreated her. Fine, she couldn't give us a son, but now she's trying to snatch the survivor benefits too. Our whole family has been bled dry by her. Brooke glanced at the commander timidly, covered her face, and started sniffling. Sir, she's not just trying to take my husband, she whimpered. She tried to hurt my baby. How is a mother supposed to accept that? The room erupted again, voices piling on top of each other. The commander only flicked a glance over them and said coldly, Lena Hart is Ethan Callahan's widow. She is entitled to those benefits. And she submitted a request to report for duty on base and support her child, he added. If she's leaving home to work on base, why would she be clinging to Owen? Ethan froze for a beat, guilt flickering through his eyes. Then he forced out, she's putting on an act. She's trying to threaten me into taking care of both households, into marrying her too. The commander's voice snapped like a whip. Absurd. That kind of archaic, backward thinking has no place here, he said, expression dark. What century do you think you're living in? I seized the opening and let my tears fall. Sir, I never wanted to remarry, I choked out. I just wanted a job so my daughter could grow up well. But they've been using their power to bully me, I went on, shaking with rage. They've smeared my name, tried to steal what I brought into the marriage, and now they're even trying to snatch the last money Ethan left for us. They're not human. The commander's jaw tightened. I came today to check on the family, he said, and to pick you up and take you to your work assignment. Then his gaze cut to Ethan. Owen, he said sharply, you've been dragging your sister-in-law's name through the mud. How can you face your brother? Ethan had no way to explain himself. He clenched his teeth and forced out, yes, sir. My mother-in-law couldn't stand seeing her son suffer. She didn't even want the money anymore. She shoved me in disgust. Get out of my house. Don't you dare ruin my son's life. You're bad luck. I gathered my passbook and everything else back into my bag, then took Nora's hand and walked to the commander. Ethan watched me with a cold, flat stare. Lena, he said, voice low and dangerous, think it through. Once you leave, don't expect to ever come back. I didn't answer. I turned away and got into the car. The vehicle pulled off, and soon Nora and I were crossing the gates onto the base. The commander placed me in an accounting position, and it was work I could pick up quickly. "Settle in here," he told me. "If you run into trouble, go to your supervisor." Only when I sat in the clean little dorm-style room did my heart finally unclench. Nora and I lived on base for more than 2 weeks, and we adapted faster than I expected. Once my supervisors learned I'd been widowed, they were so enthusiastic they even tried setting me up on dates. I refused, but I did run into someone I knew from years ago, Ryan Mercer, a classmate from the night classes I took before I married. Ryan had only recently transferred here too, and seeing him brought back those days before I got married, when I was still studying. It only made me hate how blind I'd been to marry Ethan and waste so many years. I thought I'd cut the past loose for good. Then Nora came down with a fever, and I ran into Ethan again. I'd just gotten medicine into her, and Ryan was carrying her for me as we walked out of the hospital when a dark voice sounded behind us. "Lena," Ethan said, "who the hell is that man?" He stood there with Brooke, his face dark with anger as he stared at me and Ryan. I didn't want to deal with him. I grabbed Ryan's sleeve and tried to leave, but Ethan caught up in a few long strides and seized my wrist. "Lena," he demanded, "did you hear me?" I turned back and yanked free, my face blank. "Owen," I said, "what right do you have to question me?" Ethan flicked a quick look at Brooke. "You're my sister-in-law," he snapped. "Of course I have a right. My brother hasn't been gone that long, and you're already being all over another man. Do you have any shame?" I didn't bother listening to his excuses. I tried to step away, but he stepped in front of Ryan and looked down at him. "You know she's been married, right?" Ethan said coldly. "That kid he's holding is her daughter with her husband. A used-up single mom, and you still want her," he added, cruel and loud on purpose. Then he leaned in, voice thick with malice. "I'm her husband's brother, and I look just like him," he said. "She's been treating me like a replacement, so you—" Ryan cut him off, his tone sharp and controlled. "She's your sister-in-law," he said. "Is that how you speak to her, with zero respect?" "And I don't need you to tell me who Lena is," Ryan added. "We took the same night classes. I'll judge her for myself." Ethan's face darkened. "So you're an old friend," he sneered. "What, you two had something going on even back then?" He swung his glare at me, voice rising. "Lena, you married my brother, and you still dare to betray him," he spat. "You get bored and chase something new that fast?" I couldn't hold back. I walked up and slapped him hard, then smiled like ice. "Betray him?" I said. "My marriage is none of your business. You're an outsider here, and you don't know a damn thing." Then I leaned into the lie that would gag him every time. "Last night I dreamed Ethan came to me," I said evenly. "He said he was sorry, and he wanted me to find a good man and live again. And he said you're an animal," I finished, "and I should stay far away from your whole family." Ethan blurted, "That's impossible. It's all fake." His face tightened with anger, but every time I prefaced my words with "my husband said," Ethan had nothing he could say back. Brooke stood off to the side, shot Ethan a dissatisfied look, then glared at me before hooking her arm through his. "Babe, let's go," she said, sweet and sharp at the same time. "The doctor said I need more rest. Standing around isn't good for the baby." She pushed her belly forward on purpose. "Your mom's waiting for me to give her a big, healthy grandson," Brooke added, eyes cutting to me. "Not like some people who couldn't produce a boy and still tried to sponge off their in-laws." Ethan's expression twitched. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Brooke tugged him away, and he went with her. After they left, Ryan frowned. "Your husband's brother looks like a real piece of trash," he said. "If he gives you trouble, tell me. I'll help." I gave him a small, non-committal smile and thanked him anyway. I just didn't expect things to turn so fast. A few days later, I was walking home from work along a narrow side path when someone clamped a hand over my mouth and yanked me into a small stand of trees. My heart lurched. I fought hard and bit down on the hand gripping me until the person sucked in a sharp breath. "Lena," a voice hissed, "it's me." "Listen." It was Ethan. He held my wrist in a tight grip and spoke low. "I've thought it over," he said. "I'll forgive your mistakes, and I'll let you come home. I'll handle my mom, so stop being stubborn and come back with me." A laugh almost slipped out of me. I forced it down and looked at him like he was nothing. When did I ever say I wanted to go back? I asked. I want you people out of my sight. Ethan's mouth tightened, irritation flashing across his face. He stared at me without blinking for a few seconds, and then his voice turned strange. Lena, he said, you know who I am, don't you? I'm Ethan Callahan, he confessed. The one who died was my younger brother. He watched my face, searching for cracks. Are you mad I kept it from you because I was taking care of Brooke? He asked. She's pregnant. She can't handle stress, so I had no choice. But you're the one I really care about, he said. Come back with me. We'll raise Nora together, he promised. You won't suffer. Okay. If this had happened before, if Ethan had come to me and confessed who he really was, I would have been overjoyed and gone home with him. But after seeing how tightly he and Brooke clung to each other, all I felt was bitter irony. I yanked my hand free and stared at him like he'd lost his mind. My husband is dead, I said. So, what is this supposed to be, you pretending to be him and hoping I'll fall for it? Ethan reached toward me. I'm telling you the truth. Look, the scar. I cut him off. Scars can be faked. I'm not believing a word you say. His temper snapped. He grabbed for me and tried to drag me away like I didn't have a choice. I fought hard, twisted out of his grip, and bolted the second he loosened his hold. He lunged after me, caught me again, and that's when a bright beam of light washed over us. A patrol team rushed in, moved fast, and pinned Ethan face down on the ground with practiced efficiency. They'd been nearby on rounds, heard the commotion, and stumbled onto us in the dark. And of all the people leading the patrol tonight, it had to be Ryan. He didn't waste a second. He cuffed Ethan and looked me over, worry in his eyes. Are you okay? I'd barely started to shake my head when Ethan started yelling. What are you doing? He shouted. Let me go. I'll report you for abusing your authority. Ryan's gaze turned flat and cold. You tried to force a woman. Think about what happens to you next. The others stared at Ethan with open disgust. One of them spat on him. He looks just like Colonel Callahan, but I guess that's all he has. Under the suit, he's a predator. Ethan's face flushed red with rage as he locked onto me. Lena, he snarled, you set this up, didn't you? You knew I'd come, and you trapped me on purpose. I didn't answer. Ryan lifted his hand and said calmly, if you're innocent, explain it to command. When we got in front of the duty officer, Ethan finally lost some of his arrogance and tried to invent a story. I went because I was worried about her, he said quickly. She's a woman with a kid. How is she supposed to survive without a man? I was trying to help my brother's widow, he insisted. She's the one claiming I forced her. That's a lie. The duty officer's voice turned icy. Lena has already told us she cut ties with your family, he said. So why did you drag her into the trees? What exactly were you planning to do? Then his tone sharpened. Owen, this is a crime, he said. You will be disciplined, and you'll be publicly reprimanded. Ethan didn't have a colonel's rank to hide behind anymore. If he caught an official write-up, he could lose his secure union job at the plant too. Panic hit him all at once, and the truth spilled out before he could stop it. I'm a colonel, he barked. You can't arrest me. For a second, everyone froze. Then they laughed, hard and mocking. You? A colonel? In your dreams. Ethan shouted over them, eyes wild. It's real. I'm Ethan Callahan. I'm the colonel. He turned on me like I was his lifeline. Lena, you know, he begged. Tell them. I'm Ethan. I'm your husband. All the eyes in the room shifted to me. I kept my voice steady. You're Owen, I said. My husband died, and you were the one who personally sent the body to be cremated. Ethan stared at me like I'd stabbed him. How can you not recognize me? He demanded. I am Ethan. The one who died was Owen. Hearing him say it out loud didn't soften anything. It only made the grief heavier, because he'd known the truth the entire time and still watched me become a widow in front of everyone. I looked at him and said coldly, of course I'd recognize my husband. You're not him, I continued. You can imitate a face, but you can't turn into a person. Ethan is gone, I finished. Why are you still trying to drag his name out and keep him from resting? No one believed him. Someone scoffed, if you're Ethan, why would you throw away your rank and pretend to be your brother? Another voice sneered. He's just trying to impersonate Ethan so he can dodge punishment with a colonel's status. Ethan's face went scarlet, and then his eyes suddenly lit up. I can prove it, he blurted. Brooke and my mom both know I'm Ethan. Command had Brooke and my mother-in-law brought in and interviewed separately. Ethan stood there looking smug and leaned toward me like he'd already won. Lena, he said, eyes sharp with spite, now I see what you really are. Once I get my identity back, I'm divorcing you immediately. I didn't bother reacting. I just waited for the interviews to end. A few minutes later, Brooke came out first. The second she saw Ethan, she clung to him and called, babe. Ethan jerked his arm back, so fast it was almost funny. Who are you calling that? He snapped. I'm Ethan. I'm not your husband. Brooke curled her lip. What are you talking about? I just worked my ass off convincing them we're married, she hissed under her breath. Ethan stiffened like his spine had turned to ice. Before he could say anything, my mother-in-law shuffled out, shaking her head, and pulled Ethan in close like she was sharing a secret. Don't worry, she whispered. I covered it. They won't suspect for a second that you're impersonating Owen. I let out a small, cold smile. Ethan had been so sure someone knowing would save him, and instead Brooke and his mother doubled down on the lie and looked proud of themselves for it. Sure enough, the duty officer came out last and spoke with a hard, official calm. Owen, he said, your discipline order will be finalized in 2 days and formally posted. As for your job at the plant, he added, whether they keep you is up to them. He didn't say the obvious out loud, but everyone understood. That job was gone. Ethan exploded. He whipped toward them and shouted, why did you lie? Why didn't you tell the truth? Brooke flinched, her face crumpling into outrage. What do you mean? She cried. I'm carrying your baby and you're still thinking about another woman? I ignored her glare and looked straight at Ethan. Even if you tried to impersonate Ethan again, it wouldn't help, I said calmly. His name has already been struck from the Army rolls, and he isn't a colonel anymore. In fact, the moment Ethan died, his position was filled. There had never been a way back. Ethan stared at me as if he finally understood the size of what he'd lost. Then his eyes went bloodshot with fury. It was you, he said hoarsely. You did this. How dare you close out my service record, he snarled. I shook my head with a quiet sigh. You should go home, I told him. And stop pretending you're Ethan. They dragged him out, and he was still yelling that he was a colonel and no one had the right to discipline him. Ryan told me they'd tighten security and make sure Ethan and his family couldn't corner me again. For the next few months, I didn't hear a single thing about Ethan. Then Brooke went into labor. My mother-in-law had been clinging to an old wives' tale, swearing Brooke's cravings meant she had to be carrying a boy. Even when the delivery turned dangerous, she kept insisting the baby should be saved first. After all that screaming and chaos, Brooke delivered a frail baby girl. Brooke survived, but she was left unable to have more children. I didn't learn any of it until Ethan burst into my office and started acting like time had erased everything he'd done. Lena, he said, voice pleading, it's been long enough. You should forgive me. Come back with me and let's live properly, he pressed. Give Nora a baby brother. Otherwise, with just you raising her, she won't even be able to get married someday, he added, shameless and ugly. Rage surged up my throat, and I was about to speak. Nora flew in from the hallway first and shoved him with all the strength her small body had. Bad man, she yelled. You're not my dad. I only want my mom. Get out. My mother-in-law stood behind him, and ever since Brooke had delivered a girl, she'd been swallowing her pride and trying to lure me back. Now she rolled her eyes so hard it looked like they hurt. Ungrateful ingrates, she snapped. Who needs you? She grabbed Ethan's arm. Come on. There are plenty of women out there. Lena can't even give a family a son anyway. The military police escorted them out, and only then did I start paying attention to what was happening to Ethan. After he was laid off, he couldn't find steady work again. They burned through what little they had, living off savings until there was nothing left. And Brooke's relationship with my mother-in-law rotted fast. My mother-in-law resented Brooke for only producing a daughter. Brooke hated how my mother-in-law dismissed the baby like she didn't matter. Before the baby was even a month old, she died because of my mother-in-law's negligence. People said it was suffocation. Brooke went feral with grief and screamed that my mother-in-law owed her a life. They shoved each other, stumbled, and fell. My mother-in-law was older, and she hit her head and died right there. Brooke never expected it to actually happen. She was scared out of her mind. Ethan took hit after hit and started to look hollow and worn. He turned on Brooke and began telling everyone he was Ethan and Brooke was not his wife. Not long after that, Brooke was found drowned. People whispered she'd lost her grip on reality. After that, Ethan went even more unhinged. The locals started saying madness was contagious and kept their distance, treating him like he was cursed. No one believed a word he said. They just muttered that his whole family was gone and misfortune clung to him like a shadow. Then I received transfer orders. Nora and I moved up north for better opportunities, and I never looked back. I stopped paying attention to them. My future was already unfolding, bright and wide, one steady step at a time.
This is Listening Novel. We appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed today's story, please like and subscribe for more stories, and stay tuned for what's next.